One of the great things about The Undertaker was how his character had the potential to create and inspire other characters in WWE. With such a strong gimmick tied deeply into all things supernatural, the WWE were afforded plenty of opportunities to create some dark, mystical, or unusual adversaries who could step up to the Phenom. The best example here, of course, would be Kane, The Undertaker's little brother, whose debut also expanded The Undertaker's origin story. There's also the Ministry of Darkness stable that featured a bunch of superstars changing their gimmicks in order to fall in line with the teachings of The Undertaker. And then you've got guys who were brought in to directly fight The Undertaker upon arrival, such as the unhinged Mankind character, or even Giant Gonzalez. The WWE got lucky really with the Undertaker character and the fact that fans continued to accept such a fictional gimmick for decades. The company were given an open book to develop some outlandish characters to face the dead man over the years, but sometimes things just don't work out and sometimes things just weren't meant to be. Enter Mordecai, real name Kevin Fertig, a religious zealot character who you just knew was being set up to one day wrestle The Undertaker. According to Kevin himself, the character got axed not because of what happened in the ring and on TV, but what happened on the road. He said a match was also planned where Mordecai and The Undertaker would collide on the WWE's grandest stage, but things didn't quite work out that way, unfortunately. Let's take a look at the Mordecai character in today's video. Kevin Fertig worked shows around Memphis as Seven, a character based on the 7 deadly sins. In December 2000, he had a few WWF tryout matches, with one of these airing on TV, Seven and Slash vs Too Cool on WWF Metal. A few dark matches followed, and another metal tag team match aired on TV in early 2001 with Seven and Damien taking on Grandmaster Sexay and Steve Blackman. But the company then decided that Kevin would need to spend some time in Ohio Valley Wrestling, former developmental territory for WWE. Jim Cornette said Kevin had a great look, but his cardio wasn't where it needed to be, so he was put to work in OVW and he began having regular matches in order to improve. A year passed and Kevin became part of the Disciples of Sin stable. The Disciples of Sin also included Bane, better known as Tyson Tomko, and at one point Leviathan was part of the stable, better known as Batista. By all accounts, it sounded like everyone was happy with the work Seven put in, and watching his OVW matches shows how much he improved in the ring in comparison to those matches on Metal. Cornette wondered why WWE had shown no interest in Seven. He thought that Seven spent way too long in OVW, and Jim would condense this down by saying he got over, he got good, but then he got stale. Kevin would end up completing almost 2 full years before he got that call to WWE, but he wasn't put on television. He had a 5-month stint beginning in October 2003 where he would work nothing but dark matches and house shows, usually teaming up with Tyson Tomko and usually taking losses, though there were a few victories here and there. In April of 2004 though, Kevin was called into a meeting with Vince McMahon and Kevin was presented with a real opportunity. Kevin said, "I sat in front of Vince with Stephanie McMahon on one side and John Laurinaitis on the other. Vince took off his glasses and looked up from his notebook, then started staring right through me. Now, when the devil's looking at you, you look right back. Eye to eye, I had a stare down with Vince McMahon. Vince told me, I don't need tag teams, I need single stars. What can you do?" So Kevin's in this meeting with Vince, Stephanie and Johnny Ace, and according to Kevin, he was ready for this question. Kevin grew up in a Southern Baptist house in Memphis and he attended a church that 12,000 people attended during services, apparently. He watched the pastor, who he described as being all hell, fire and brimstone, really over the top, and Kevin thought this would make a perfect wrestling character. Quick side note, Bruce Prichard said the pastor was actually Kevin's father, but Kevin didn't mention anything about his dad in all the interviews that I watched and read. Just thought that was worth pointing out. Kevin wanted to come in as a heel named Malachi, dressed in white as a symbol of his purity, and his mission was to rid WWE, its fans, and indeed the whole world of sin. There would be prayers in the ring, there would be opponents who sinned one week and had to repent the next. It really didn't sound like a terrible idea, though the WWE would take it one step further. Also, Bruce Prichard took credit for dressing Kevin in the pure white gear. Again, worth pointing out that Kevin didn't mention Prichard at all when talking about the creation of Mordecai. Not calling anyone a liar here, but there are conflicting stories. Kevin said, I told Vince my idea of a religious zealot who was enraged by sin. I laid out my idea of long coats and a cross, almost popish, and even vignettes with a confessional where I punch through the confessional booth and choke out the sinner. Vince's eyes blew up and he looked at me and he said, "Holy shit." The day after this meeting, Kevin was pulled out of catering to record some pre-tapes. McMahon wanted to see Kevin's vision and likely get an idea of where his promo abilities were, seeing as he'd cut none at all during his time in WWE. Again, according to Kevin, Vince brought The Undertaker in to watch these promos, so already the light bulb had went off and Vince was thinking about this character being an upcoming opponent for the dead man. Kevin continued on. Vince watched me as I stoically said, "Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil." Vince loved it and he immediately got Taker, and they both watched me. Taker gave me a nod, which meant I did something great, and this led to the point where Vince was going to play God and I was casting judgment upon all WWE. The Malachi name got changed to Mordecai, and fans got their first look at this new character on the April 15th, 2004 episode of Smackdown. A video played that showed a man dressed in all white kneeling at a cross. He says, "The heavens have been ripped open and a pale rider has thundered out. Mordecai is the pale rider." And he says he'll trample underfoot the evildoers, the wicked, and the profane. All those who don't heed Mordecai's message will suffer. Mordecai is the right hand of the Father, and the Father's vengeance flows through him. We should hear Mordecai, we should fear Mordecai, because the time of reckoning is upon us. I remember when these first aired and immediate comparisons to The Undertaker were made. You had this kind of paradox where Taker was good but he wore black and Mordecai was a heel that wore white. They were like these opposites and this wasn't ignored by fans at the time. After the promo, Michael Cole and Taz have no idea what they just watched and they have no further information to give. So fans would need to tune in the following week to see the next promo. On the following episode then, Mordecai says society has become a sickly, bloated carcass of corruption. Bad people have walked around without consequence for far too long, and a dark veil of evil has been cast over the face of righteousness. Mordecai has been chosen to tear that veil off and look at sinners straight in the eye. He says, "Hear me, fear me, for the day of judgment draws near." Gotta say, his delivery in these promos was absolutely fine too. You could tell he was going all in and there's a certain degree of belief in what he said. You gotta remember too that Kevin probably saw this as his only opportunity to get his foot in the door, and if The Undertaker had given him the seal of approval, then this really could have been Kevin's one-way ticket to wrestling superstardom. It appears that the following promo was removed from WWE Network, and it's kinda significant because Mordecai removes his hood for the first time, and we get a good look at how far Kevin went for this gimmick. Hair and facial hair totally dyed white. I'm not so sure why it's been removed, but he does mention blasphemous harlots and perverts who seek them out, so maybe that's the reason why. But there's way more risque stuff still on WWE Network right now, so I've no idea. The next promo is on WWE Network though, and in this one, it's confirmed that Mordecai would appear at Judgment Day later in the week. He says sin eats away at the soul of society like a ravenous cancer, ravaging it until there's nothing left but a black hole of despair. Mordecai emerges from that black hole ready to punish the wicked, destroy the unrighteous, and to turn each sin against the sinner. No clues about what Mordecai would actually do at the Judgment Day show, but it turns out he'd have a match against top tier WWE sinner Scotty 2 Hotty. One of the things Bruce Prichard mentioned about Mordecai, and one of the reasons why he apparently fell out of favour, was because he tried too much to be like The Undertaker, using slow and methodical offense before he even got over as this new character. Let's check out this match and see if that was the case. First of all, the entrance. I thought it was fine. Mordecai carries his cross and he makes flames rise from the floor when he hits it on the ground. He walks slowly to the ring before putting his cross or whatever it is on its own stand, and then he prays in the corner. He removes his hood, and this does kinda remind me of The Undertaker removing his hat, but we all got a good look at Mordecai and it looks like Scotty 2 Hotty doesn't want to be here anymore. Scotty gets his head slammed on the mat right at the opening bell and Mordecai throws his opponent into the ring post. He then wraps Scotty's arm around the ring post and he delivers a few knees to the head while Scotty's draped over the apron. Mordecai does take his time getting back in the ring, and even Michael Cole says he's slow and methodical, but I don't really see this as a problem. What was he meant to do? Drop downs, leapfrogs, and flying head scissors, As a matter of fact, I think it was better that he was slow and deliberate. It gives his opponent more time to sell. Scotty takes a boot to the skull and it looks like it's more or less all over. He does fight back and he hits a great looking super kick before setting Mordecai up for the worm, but Mordecai throws Scotty into the middle rope and Scotty falls on Mordecai's neck. Yeah, this could have been better. Mordecai hits a short arm clothesline and he looks up to the heavens before delivering his finisher, a crucifix powerbomb or a razor's edge. Mordecai looks up again at the end of the match as Michael Cole calls him impressive yet freaky. He goes out and he grabs his cross, and that was the in-ring debut of Mordecai. I didn't think it was terrible, to be honest, and I know this character has been covered a lot for being a failure and all that stuff, but I really don't see any issue here. The look was unique, nothing was terribly messed up in the ring from what I can see as a viewer. Maybe the live audience didn't get into it as much as they could have, but there's always more time to work on that. You want to know how many more matches Mordecai has in WWE? 2. Only 2 more matches, but we do have more promos to look at. On the next episode of Smackdown, held in Las Vegas, the Pale Rider interrupted a match featuring Billy Kidman and a KO, and the offense was so much different than what we saw at Judgment Day. Mordecai throws his opponents around like they were nothing at all, and everything's delivered with a lot more force and a lot more impact. Check out this clothesline, for example. It does help when you've got guys like Billy Kidman and the future Jimmy Wang Yang in there, but again, I thought Mordecai looked good. The next week we get another vignette, and this time Mordecai's talking to the Father. He says the course has been laid before him and the Father's paved the road to righteousness with sinners. Mordecai will make these sinners pay with their blood and he'll purge their flesh with pain. A sinner has already been chosen. Mordecai has a target, and he says his one-man crusade has only just begun. The following week though, on the 3rd of June episode of Smackdown, this would be a huge test for Mordecai as he was scheduled to cut his first in-ring promo. This could very well be a make or break moment for sure. Remember the Brood's first in-ring promo? Yeah, there's always a chance things can rapidly go downhill. Mordecai demands a moment of silence so he can pray for the fans' sins. He gets down on one knee as the crowd boos, and he heals it up right away by saying he's kneeling in a ring that's located in a cesspool of a country. The children are spoiled brats, the women are no better than the harlots that sell themselves on the city streets, weak-minded men are cowardly and corrupt. The Father may forgive these people, but Mordecai does not. They will hear him, they will fear him, because Mordecai has damned every last one of these sinners to hell. Again, I thought this was fine. People thought this was bad. The only problem I could see with this is the gimmick itself not having enough staying power to last for a few years. If Mordecai had stuck around, I'd bet his faith would eventually waver and the storyline would turn more comedic. Mordecai visiting the red light district and finding Shawn Michaels' fanny pack, things like that. So, who was this sinner that Mordecai said he was targeting 2 weeks ago? Was it The Undertaker? No. Think about it. Which SmackDown superstar would happily admit to sinning? Who would lie, cheat, and steal to ensure he kept his championship belt around his waist? Yeah, it was Eddie Guerrero. Mordecai says the locker room is filled with sinners and blasphemers, but one is the worst of all. He's got the gall to call himself a champion. He lies, cheats, and steals. He throws good values in the gutter, and he will suffer for his transgressions. Eddie Guerrero will pay the price. He will hear Mordecai. He will fear Mordecai. Eddie had an upcoming WWE Championship defense at the Great American Bash. He was facing JBL in a bull rope match. Oh, JBL's completely free from sin, I'm sure. So maybe Mordecai was going to cost Eddie the championship at the pay-per-view? Nah, he wouldn't do a thing. The next week, he was randomly fighting backstage with Hardcore Holly, and their fight spilled out into the arena and back into the corridors. The fight had to get broken up, and Mordecai screamed at Holly that he was gonna crucify him. It felt a little out of place after all that talk about going after the biggest sinner of them all, but Mordecai vs Hardcore Holly was booked for the Great American Bash later in the week. So let's take a look at that match. Here we get to see another test. We see if Mordecai can take an ass kicking. Instantly, Hardcore Holly gets the upper hand, and we're now seeing Mordecai Mordecai in a position we hadn't seen yet. Holly ties Mordecai up in the ropes and the Pale Rider takes a ton of punches and a boot to the head. Mordecai then puts on the brakes and he slides out of the ring after an Irish whip. But on the outside, he manages to throw Holly into his cross or symbol, whatever it is. And back in the ring, Mordecai controls the match with double axe handles to Holly's back. There's nothing slow or methodical here. Mordecai lays it in while Holly sits in the corner. Mordecai boots Holly in the face, and then Mordecai applies a chin lock that admittedly kills the audience. It's absolute silence to start off, but it turns into loud boos when it stays in for way too long. I'm sure the guys in the ring preferred the silence. Holly fights out and he delivers a stun gun, but the crowd boo again when Mordecai bumps into Holly and both men go down. It's incredible how much this crowd doesn't care here, and really, why should they? This match was plucked out of thin air and nobody cares who wins and who loses. Holly delivers 2 clotheslines followed by a top rope clothesline. He then delivers an inverted DDT, but Mordecai kicks out before replying with a sit-down spine buster. The match comes to an end when Holly goes for the Alabama Slam, but Mordecai counters and we see the Crucifix Powerbomb. Mordecai defeats Hardcore Holly at the Great American Bash, and the match didn't go down well at all. It shows the importance of building a match up, especially when there's such a deliberate gimmick involved. You'd think Eddie Guerrero had to be next, right? Eddie would be the stepping stone onto The Undertaker, maybe? No and no. As a matter of fact, Mordecai had his final match the next night on Smackdown against Cruiserweight Champion Rey Mysterio. The commentators had scrapped the whole Eddie Guerrero being the targeted sinner too. They said at the Great American Bash it could be Holly, they say here on Smackdown it could be Rey Mysterio, but Mordecai flat out said in that last vignette that Eddie was the biggest sinner of all and he was going to pay for his sins when Mordecai got a hold of him. So I think WWE knew they weren't going to go any further with Mordecai ever since the Smackdown before Great American Bash. This Rey Mysterio match on Smackdown was decent. It's a pretty typical Rey Mysterio match of this era, which isn't a bad thing. But Mordecai did get in some unique offense, like this illegal hold using the ring post. He also applied a hangman when Rey went for a middle rope springboard move. But Rey just simply out-wrestled Mordecai by staying one step ahead with his high-risk moves. Rey hits a 619, but the West Coast pop gets countered. Mordecai tried to powerbomb Rey on the ropes here for whatever reason, and it didn't look too good. And his big boot afterwards lacked any impact, a far cry from just a few weeks ago. Mordecai goes for the Razor's Edge, it gets countered with a Hurricane Rana, and Mordecai takes his first and last defeat on Smackdown. The character was never mentioned again on TV, and Smackdown moved on like he never existed. Just like the creation of the Mordecai character, we have conflicting information about what happened and why Mordecai got scrapped. As mentioned, Bruce Prichard said he was too slow in the ring and he tried too much to be like The Undertaker. Crowds didn't like it, Vince didn't like it, so he was sent back to OVW and that's all there is to it. Kevin said he got in a bar fight and WWE didn't want anything to do with him for a while because of the negative attention it would receive when Kevin went to court. It was probably both things to be honest, but I really don't think Mordecai worked like The Undertaker at all for what it's worth. The Great American Bash match was bad for sure and the crowd didn't enjoy it, but that wasn't because he was wrestling like The Undertaker, it was because Mordecai and Holly were put in a filler match that nobody cared about. Mordecai wasn't for everyone of course, but watching his run back and watching all his promos back, I think this was a case of WWE dropping the ball and not so much Kevin. He wasn't perfect, there was still a lot of work to do, but there were way worse gimmicks and characters that managed to survive and I thought the character could have worked. You can definitely tell Kevin wanted it to work. As mentioned, his promo delivery wasn't bad and he'd done a good job of remaining in character from the moment his entrance music hit, but it's one of those things that just wasn't supposed to be, unfortunately. Watch this stuff back though and find out for yourself. There's a narrative out there about Mordecai and other wrestlers having these horrible and hilariously bad failed gimmicks, and it's things like this that makes its way into YouTube videos, articles, and lists about how atrocious it all was. I think otherwise, and maybe you will too if you take some time to actually check out his work. Could it have been better? Absolutely, but it wasn't as bad as others make it out to be. Kevin said his run was supposed to lead to an Undertaker match at WrestleMania 21, but Taker instead ended up working with Randy Orton. Kevin would make his way back to WWE during the launch of the weekly ECW TV show on Sci-Fi. He returned as Kevin Thorn, ECW's very own vampire, so at least he got another shot. Maybe we'll take a look at Kevin Thorn down the road, but that one won't be for a while yet. Thanks for watching this one guys, I hope you enjoyed it, and take care.
Did you hear the story about like this is just hearsay? Don't jump on me, you fucking listeners that are like, he hates everybody. This is just what we heard. This is what was going around at the time. Mordecai was being funneled towards a storyline with the Undertaker.
Yep.
And Lasagna was going down to OVW to try and make it all, I don't know, keep an eye on it or something. And propositioned Mordecai that if he didn't make out with him, he would nix the storyline. And he was like, what? Or I choked him or something. Because funny enough, they both ended up getting like fired at the same time.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, so something happened there, whether it was a proposition or not.
That's exactly what I heard. Same thing.
Right. And then later, Lasagna's name came up again during the speaking out movement. So, good thing he has a job somewhere.